Hey peoples, how you feeling today? Thank you for everyone who's been tuning in with me all week as we discuss the strength of a woman. Hopefully you were one of the 85 people who downloaded their free copy over the weekend. So we've gotten together 4 days already this week, and we've talked about the story of Sharon, who lost everything as she prepared to move from the United Kingdom to the US. She, in a period of 6 years, she had to deal with the illness of her son, the untimely loss of her father, and then as she prepared to move to the US with her newlywed husband, he died. Um, and she had to rebuild her life after losing everything: her home, her job, her car, her finances. The next day, we talked about Robin. Robin's story was reclaiming her life from sexual assault and long-term abuse in her home. As a young girl, at the age of 5, she started being raped by her father, who she later found out was not her father. Um, there was domestic violence in the home, and only at the age of 12 did her and her mother and siblings finally break free and start to be able to rebuild their lives and start to heal. And now she raises her 4 children. She's happily married. She's a loving, stable person, and she credits that to the love of her stepfather, who helped heal her. And I find beauty in that because the very thing that had broken her, which should have been a father's love, was what helped put her back together. The next day, we talked about Amanda, and Amanda is legally blind and suffers from autism also. And Amanda, she had to not only try to navigate the world with this um, confusion of not being able to see as well as others, but also trying to navigate emotions that she didn't quite understand because autism did things to her that she couldn't comprehend. The next day, we talked about Sierra's story, and Sierra fought her way out of almost 2 decades long depression. And she realized that she was actually holding herself back by letting depression win, and she reclaimed her life. And today we're going to talk about our anonymous contributor. And I told you briefly about her as we were wrapping up yesterday. And I was telling you that, our anonymous contributor, she didn't want to tell her story. She hasn't told her story to some of the most important people in her life, so she surely wasn't looking to tell it to strangers. But I compelled her to share her story, not only for her own cathartic feelings and healing, but because I knew that her story could empower someone else. We live in a society where we don't talk about some of the most important things we need to talk about. And while mental health is one of them, sexual health is another. We live in a society where we hook up with strangers all the time. Like, it's a hookup culture. I mean, y'all have dating apps and Tinder and things like that that I'll never go on, but y'all have them. And y'all hook up with total strangers, people you'll never see again. And while it used to be bad, it's ridiculous now. And in this hookup culture, no one's talking about STDs and sexual health. No one's talking about that stuff to someone they don't plan to see again. I grew up in the 90s where HIV was something everyone was talking about all of a sudden because it wasn't as taboo. And I remember when it was like the most confusing thing for me. I was about 16 years old. Um, I was in class. We were in my science class. And my teacher announced that we were going to have a guest speaker come in. And the guest speaker was going to talk to us about life with HIV, you know? And at this point, it hadn't touched my life in any other way. Um, no, that's not true. At that point, my mother was at home suffering from HIV, right? And so I think I perked up when they said that someone was going to come in and talk about HIV because my mother had it. And so I'm sitting in class and the woman walks in and I don't recognize her. So, I was like, okay, chick walks in, whatever. Head back down though. I'm waiting to hear her talk. And then she says her name. My head goes all the way back up. And I look at her. I said, that's my cousin. It was my cousin. Had just walked into my class to talk to us about HIV. And I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. My cousin just walked into my class to talk to us about HIV, and yet none of us knew that she had it. It wasn't something that the family was aware of. And so it was very weird for her to walk in to talk to my class about having HIV. And so I remember, we listened to her story. And when I got home, I couldn't wait to tell my mother. I was like, oh my God, guess who walked in my class today to talk to my class about life with HIV. And so HIV has been a part of my life since I was, I want to say 15, 14. Because it's so weird, but I'll never forget. My mother was pregnant, and she got a call one day from a stranger that was like, I know you don't know me or anything, but I walked in on my sister having sex with your boyfriend, and she's HIV positive, and I thought you should know. And my mother was pregnant at the time, you know. So that was very devastating for her to even get that call, right? Um, and so she got that call, and it really like fucked her up. It did. It fucked her up. And I remember her like being devastated and not knowing, how to process that. And so when my cousin walked in and said that she was HIV positive, I didn't know how to process that. Like that was like, what the hell is going on? All of a sudden, it's around me, you know. And I think I was 16 at the time. I think I was 16. And, by the time I was 17, I had been diagnosed with herpes. And so I had a lifelong STD myself. And so it's just like, it seemed like STDs were like this huge part of my life. And I remember being in high school, and I did my final English exam on STDs to try to educate my cohort, my client, fellow classmates, and it was crazy, how much it became prevalent at that time. And so when I met this young lady, years ago, and she confided in me that, she hadn't told many people in her life, not even her own child, that she was HIV positive. I told her my mother's story because I wanted to encourage her, because my mother, um, not only did she have it, but she ended up finding love, like she found someone to love her and was in a happy, stable, long-term relationship until she died, you know? And so I thought that, this young lady should know that stories like hers and my mother's, they needed to be told. Stories like mine need to be told, because people think that once this thing happens to them, that that's it, and they have no other options for life, and they have to degrade degrade themselves and settle. The worst thing I've seen someone with a long-term STD do is settle. Oh God, someone's at my door. I'll be right back. Sorry, y'all. Um, and we need to know that you're not, invaluable and dirty, and that you can still have a life and happiness and joy and everything that you want in life. Like, it doesn't stop us. And so I want to share, before we get started, I left you with some questions to think about as we go through this. And one of the questions is, have you ever hid a life-altering secret from your closest friends and family? And the other is, have you ever contemplated suicide? And so I want you to think about those things as we go through this chapter of the book. And I'd like to start with the introduction of the book for anyone who hasn't joined us before. And so we're reading from The Strength of a Woman. And the introduction is, the strength of a woman is unmatched by most forces of nature. There have been news reports of women lifting cars to free their trapped child. Incredible, right? For centuries, women have been the backbones of their families and communities both. Yet the cry of the woman who nurtures all is often unheard. Looks to for strength, she is not allowed to be weak. Women must bear the children and bury them. Bury the ones who brought us into the world, and even our spouses. We nurture children who grow up to resemble in no way the child we bore and loved. No matter the adversity, we're taught that it's just life, and real women deal with it. The women in this book did more than just deal with it. They made it work for them. Life happens. There's ups and downs, and some of the downs can almost kill you, literally, but they're still here. Not only are they here, they're standing strong to tell their stories in hopes of encouraging another woman to find strength in her own struggles. When I connected with this group of women from across the US and UK, I knew that I had found a special bunch, and I was honored to be able to share their stories of smiling in the face of adversity. The strength of a woman can be found in her smile, the shine of her eyes, the swing in her step, and even her laughter as the world crumbles around her. To look at many women, you never imagine the struggles that they're facing or have had to overcome. Women wear the mask of survivor well. Our hope is to touch at least one woman's life and give her the courage to push forward towards her own happiness. So today we're going to talk about our anonymous contributor. Hmm. And she titled her essay, "This Thing in My Blood." Hmm. This thing in my blood. Ugh. She said, I must write my story as anonymous, not just because, I don't know, not just because I am not strong enough to be upfront about everything, but for my son's sake. Life was so different back in January 2012. It was a new year. I was in a wonderful relationship, and I had two great jobs. I was active with friends at parties and bars. I was a Cub Scout leader, just living life and having a blast. My life couldn't have been better. I thought I had everything I could ask for. I was 26 and on top of the world. When the spring came, I decided it was time to get a place of my own. My son and I had been living with my parents since my college graduation. A place of my own turned to a place for myself, my guy, and my son. In June of 2012, we moved into a cozy two-bedroom apartment. Things were working out wonderfully. We were happy. Friends would come by for game nights and fun times. In July, I was asked to join my cousin at a modeling event. Even though I didn't think I was model material, I went. and I had so much fun that I started modeling more often. In October, my boyfriend suggested that we start trying for a baby. We were happy and stable, so I thought it was a great idea. I was excited to have my own little family. It seemed like God was finally granting me everything I could ask for. I couldn't have been more wrong. Life changes so suddenly. It was a normal day in November 2012 when I ran out of contact lens solution and made an appointment with my doctor. While doing a routine eye exam, the doctor noticed some spots in my eyes and ordered me to see a specialist. Upon further examination, the specialist realized it was a health issue outside of his field of expertise. I was confused. How could I be sick? I'd been feeling extremely well. I made an appointment with my primary care physician, and he asked everything if I would like to be fully checked for everything. I figured, why not? I'm healthy. I saw my doctors, including my OBGYN, regularly. I couldn't imagine anything being wrong with me. When all my blood work came back, they told me they noticed some abnormalities. I was even more confused. My doctor told me that what he was seeing may be HIV and suggested I see another doctor to have in-depth testing done. Friday, December 2012, I had in-depth blood work and testing done. The whole time I was going through testing fears, I never told my boyfriend any of it. I was afraid how he would react and what if the doctors were wrong. I'm gonna stop right here. Anonymous had a great life, stability, love, happiness, until one day it just all crashed down around her without any warning. Has your life ever just dramatically changed without warning? Like, how did you handle it? And then we have some illnesses that go quite some time in our bodies undetected. Have you ever went to the doctor for a routine visit, found out you had an actual illness or condition? If so, how did that alter your life? So she said, he and I had plans to go away with my friends for the weekend. During our time away, one of my friends noticed that I was upset and asked what was wrong. I confessed to her what I had been dealing with since my eye appointment. I trusted her and was glad that I could finally tell someone, anyone else. She said I hadn't told anyone else, and I swore her to secrecy. I promised that once my test came back and my status was confirmed, I'd tell my boyfriend the news. The Monday following the trip was also the day I was scheduled to receive my test results. I went to work like everything was normal, yet I was anxious all day. When I went in to see my doctor, he informed me that I was indeed HIV positive. I think I took it well, even though I was alone. Needing someone to talk to, I told a coworker who I was close with. While I was at work, still grasping with the news that I could die, I had contracted a virus that had killed millions of people already. I received a phone call stating that the so-called friend that I had told over the weekend had told my boyfriend before I could. I had a small breakdown at work. My coworker attempted to calm me down, saying that if my boyfriend really cared about me, he would stay at my place and wait till I got off. The news seemed to spread fast. When I got home, two of my best friends at the time was waiting for me. I went into the apartment to discover that my boyfriend had packed up all his belongings and left me without a word or concern at a time that I really needed him the most. The day I found out I was HIV positive, I felt like I lost it all. So Anonymous, she was dealing with a serious issue that she wasn't even comfortable telling her mate about. She told a friend that she thought she could trust. Have you ever trusted someone with something so important and they betrayed you? How did that affect your ability to trust and tell people when you have a problem now? When she needed him the most, the man she loved and was planning a family with, he walked out on her. Have you ever felt betrayed in your moment of need by the person you love? She said, I went out to my car to grab a cigarette and smoke, and my friends followed. I was inconsolable. One of my friends started getting nervous because my moods went from highs to lows, and I started to burn myself with a lighter to calm myself. They called the cops, terrified I was going to hurt myself. I was admitted for the night. I called my boss to tell her I'd be late. She was already aware of what had happened somehow. The date 12/12/12 was burned into my mind. The day before, my whole world had been turned upside down. As I walked back in my apartment to attempt to get ready for work as if life was normal, my now ex showed up, not caring about my health or my feelings at all. He informed me that he wanted his name removed from the lease and he was ending our relationship. I begged him not to end it, to stay and at least talk it out, but he lied, unwilling to even talk to me. I broke down again. I called my boss and I told her I would not be able to make it into the office after all. I went to the drugstore up the road and bought multiple bottles of pills and a knife. Then I went to the liquor store and I bought a couple of bottles. At the time, he was saying that the world was supposed to end on 12/12/12 anyway. Why not take my life? I was all alone and I had no one. Having not told anyone besides the friends that was at my apartment that Monday, that one friend from the trip and my coworker and boss. I just did not see a way I could go on living with this crazy thing in my blood. I couldn't fathom how I was supposed to be happy all alone. I made a video saying goodbye to everyone and I posted it on social media and I headed to the park. I was in the park taking pills when my phone started to blow up. People were texting me saying they were looking for me and they had called the cops. I didn't want to be found, so I started to drive around, down in pills with the vodka. I had no idea where I was going and finally ended up in a parking garage, cold and dizzy. Though I was a mess, I still wanted to take more pills. I wanted to die. Instead, I started to vomit. Someone must have called my ex-boyfriend and told him what was going on. He called, saying that he wanted to talk and for me to come over. I thought he wanted to reconcile. I told him I would stop by to talk to him. Drunk and medicated, I got back on the road. When I arrived at his house, the police were called. I ran into the bathroom and started to take more pills. The police got me out of the bathroom, placing me in handcuffs before taking me back to the hospital to have my stomach pumped. They refused to release me as they had the night before, and instead checked me in on suicide watch. When the pills and liquor wore off, and I was in a stable frame of mind, I learned more about the events that had happened over the weekend and that previous Monday. Hmm. Anonymous felt she had been handed a death sentence, but a lifetime of being alone. Not only a death sentence, but a lifetime of being alone, ostracized, isolated. The mere thought of it drove her to nearly taking her own life. Um, has life ever seemed so bad that you felt suicide was the only way out? You're still here. How did you make it through? We all have our stories. I have my own story. We all have our stories, don't we? She said, it turns out on Sunday, when we returned from the trip, the friend that I had confided in over the weekend had told everyone from the trip about my status, urging them to all get tested. She tried to convince them that they must tell my boyfriend. They all took the news in, but informed her that telling my boyfriend was my job. She took it upon herself to further attempt to ruin my life and alienate me, and not only told my now ex, but other ex-boyfriends that they should go get tested. Where only a handful of people knew what I was dealing with on Saturday. By Monday, almost everyone knew. And some of the people they knew. I was HIV positive. My ex-boyfriend felt bad for how it all played out and talked to me every day that I was in the hospital. He was there for me as a friend. He later told me that the same friend had came to the apartment to convince him to leave me and then helped him pack his things. I felt so alone when I got back to my apartment that I trashed all my Christmas things. What kind of holiday season would I have now? My son was staying at my parents'. I made my way to see him, hoping to feel better. My son was distraught. He informed me that he had gotten made fun of at school because someone had found out his mother tried to kill herself. Life had to go on. I was sick, but I was still here. I tried to pick up the pieces of my life and move forward. I started to model again, but people always commented that I had a sadness in my eyes. I started to retreat into myself. I stopped doing things I loved the most. One of my favorite cousins started coming in town to help cheer me up. It was a rough time in my life. I found out that one of my so-called friends didn't want to be around me anymore or have her children near me. The person that had decided to tell my ex-boyfriend about everything for months and months to ask me to forgive her because she thought that she was doing the right thing. I had no idea, to be honest, why she thought she could do that, but I finally did forgive her. But our friendship is not and never will be the same. I stopped talking to people I used to call every day. My lease for my apartment was over. I said screw it and moved back in with my parents. In October 2013, my friend was having a birthday event at a club. I almost didn't go because it was a work night, but a coworker suggested that I get out the house. Like Cinderella, I could go home at midnight. I agreed and went. I saw some old friends and was having a wonderful time when I saw this handsome guy come into the club. He grabbed my attention right away, and I saw that I caught his. We started dancing and ended up dancing the whole night away until the lights came on. He asked me for my number, and I gave it to him. We talked nonstop and text all the time. It was love at first sight, I swear. We planned our first date, and I figured it was best to lay out everything on the table up front. I told him about my suicide attempt and my status and how my life is because of my HIV diagnosis. He accepted me for everything and was extremely happy that I was upfront with him. Our relationship isn't always great. We've had our bad times, but he proposed 2 years later. We still aren't married, and I still live with my parents. But at this time, we're praying that I can find work and save money for a place of our own and get the wedding I dream of. I lost a lot of friends since I found out that I was HIV positive. I don't go out as much as I used to. I feel lonely so much more than before. I miss my old life at times, but I realize who my true friends and supporters are. At times, I do feel lost. I hate taking pills, and right now I don't have health insurance, so I have no idea how healthy I am. I've been working out and taking care of my body more than I was before. I made a promise to my son. I will not attempt to take my life ever again. But 5 years later, I still haven't told him why I did it, or that his mother is HIV positive. I plan to tell him before he goes off to college in a few years. I'm praying and trying to get right with God and myself, one day at a time, and things will get better, God willing. I will see him graduate, and he'll walk me down the aisle as I marry the man of my dreams. You know, this young lady, I said she's one that I actually know personally in this book. And she's one of these beautiful spirits, like such an amazing person that you couldn't even imagine something bad happening to her. You know, she's like light and energy. And she still walks around like in a bubble as if she's not good enough. And you know, it hurts. And so I share her story, and I share stories like my mother's, um, to encourage women, and my own, and my own, to encourage women, you know. My mother found love. My anonymous contributor found love. I found love many times. Right now, I'm happy, like happy, happy in love. Um, but this thing in your blood, it doesn't change the thing in your heart. It doesn't change who you are, you know. Um, After fearing being alone for life, Anonymous met a guy and fell for him. She told him up front about her suicide attempt and her HIV status. How open are you with your potential lovers about your health and serious issues? Do you hide things you should share for fear of rejection? I think out of Anonymous' story, she left us with two very, very important things that we must remember. Life changes so suddenly. It does, like in a blink of an eye. The one consistent thing about life is the change in it. So just be prepared to roll with the flow because it's never gonna just be what you think it is. That's not how life works. You know, there's ups and downs, and each thing is gonna be a part of our particular journey. You just have to learn to roll with the flow and know that you're moving along your path, and things they work out the way they're supposed to. You know, she almost tried to kill herself in 2012, fearing that this thing in her blood was either going to kill her or keep her from having love. And it's 2019, and she's still here, and she's happy in love, and has been for years. She almost let a situation that she had no control of control her life, take her life, instead of doing what she could do to be in control of the situation. I, for one, am glad she's still here. She's a beautiful spirit. So I think from her story, we can take away that she thought she had a perfect life, a loving relationship, and supportive friends. But when her world came crashing down around her, she nearly took her life. And 7 years later, she's happy in love, engaged, raising her son, and still modeling. She almost let temporary emotions rob her of years of her life. And we must be cognizant that temporary emotions can ruin a lot of things. And we have to stop and process what's going on so that we make the best decisions. And Anonymous X wasn't a bad guy. He too had bad friends. He got devastating news from a third party who helped him pack. But ultimately, it was him who saved her life by convincing him to come over to his house, which resulted in her getting her stomach pumped. He also visited her at the hospital every day and continued to be her friend. People are more understanding than we give them credit for. Anonymous told a new guy her status right away. And 7 years later, 6 years later, they're still together. Um, Life isn't all peaches and cream, but it isn't all skulls and crossbones either. It's truly what we make it. Of learning to love myself after a lifetime of abuse, depression, battling mental illness, and being in the porn industry, um, and how that affected me and what it took for me to reclaim my life um, from what I thought I had to be. So I appreciate you tuning in. And tomorrow I'll actually be here at 12:30 instead of 12. Be here at 12:30 tomorrow. Uh, and I appreciate y'all. And I'll see you tomorrow at 12:30.